So I have finished reading The Grief of Stones by Katherine Addison. This is the sequel to The Witness for the Dead and technically picks up pretty soon after the previous book ends. So like the previous book, this is a murder mystery, and it begins when Celehar is called in by a Marquess to investigate the circumstances of his wife's death. So she passed away a couple months ago, and originally everyone thought that it was of natural causes, except that it was a very sudden passing, especially for someone who was in good health. And when he was looking through her things, her husband discovered that she actually had received like a threatening message. So now he thinks that she might have been murdered, and he calls in Celehar to ask him to witness for her, like to look into the situation surrounding her death and to help him bring the killer to justice if there is one. And Celehar's investigations bring him to a foundling school. So it sounds like these are schools for orphans, basically. Usually this one is for girls, and while he's there, he receives another message from one of the students asking him for help. And this is, it seems really fishy, especially since there, on the surface, doesn't appear to be anything wrong at the school. So in addition to his investigations, this book delves more into the life that Celehar is building for himself in Amalo, like this city. Like he's, made some friends in the previous book. He's starting to make more connections with the people around him, and he also gets himself an apprentice in this book. So she's also someone who can hear the dead, but she came to this calling unusually late. Like normally people discover like they have this ability in childhood, and a lot of times these are people who are already working to become prelates, like essentially priests and stuff, so they already are like in the process of being trained to be a witness and stuff. But in her case, she only just discovered that she had this ability when her husband passed away and she happened to touch his body, so her situation is extremely unusual. But Celehar, well, I guess he doesn't exactly have a choice about taking her on, but agrees to take her on as his student and starts to teach her the ropes of how to be a witness for the dead. So something I liked about this story, you get to see more of what the day-to-day life is like for a witness for the dead, which you didn't see quite as much of in the previous book, like especially in terms of how the ability to speak to the dead is used, like because it's walking through Celehar, showing his student like these or taking her on different jobs that people come to him for. Like you get to see more of like these small cases, like someone asking him to ask a deceased person for a recipe that's like desperately important to their bakery business, but that the person who passed away forgot to pass on like while they were still alive. So a lot of these examples, and I think that was really fun to hear about, especially with how weird some of the cases were. Like especially like there was this one scene where someone's asking him for help for something, and then like when he agrees, he's like, oh, okay, they'll go with her to, so he can touch the body and so on. She's like, oh no, he doesn't have to, because she brought the person with her, and she like pulls out the person's ashes. So there's a lot of the bits of humor and stuff that definitely make the story also fun to read. But something I did not like, I think the story wasn't as, like the cases and stuff weren't as continuous as the previous book. Like it didn't feel quite as well put together, but I have a little hard time pinpointing exactly why. And also I didn't like that it, it's not a tragedy, but I would say that for me, I think it ends on kind of a not very upbeat note.